Hey guys, tonight we slip back through the swirling fog of London into the year 1887, where your boots crunch softly over cobblestones slick with rain. The smell of coal smoke clings to your hair. Horse hooves clatter in the distance, and here you are, about to push open the heavy door to a Victorian brothel. Romantic? Maybe. Dangerous? Absolutely. Let me be blunt. You probably won't survive this life very long, though you'll certainly collect stories worth whispering across centuries. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop your current location and local time in the comments. I love knowing who's listening across time zones. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You push the creaking door, and instantly a wash of orange glow from gas lamps greets your tired eyes. Velvet curtains brush your sleeve, perfumed air mingles awkwardly with the stale tang of pipe smoke, and laughter, shrill, brittle, echoes in the foyer. This is your new workplace, or, less dramatically, your new battlefield. Everything smells like spilled brandy and rosewater trying desperately to cancel each other out. The madam sits in her upholstered chair like a queen with an empire measured in rouge and rent money. Her gown is midnight blue satin, but the real authority is her gaze. It flickers over you the way a pawnbroker examines gold. Value must be assessed, debts recorded, and yes, rules enforced. Victorian brothels, after all, aren't lawless dens of chaos. They're businesses. You're stepping into one of the period's most paradoxical occupations. Simultaneously condemned as vice and sustained by endless demand. You try to imagine yourself as those novels described women of the demi-monde, mysterious beauties, draped in pearls, courted by dukes. But by the smell of cabbage wafting from the kitchen, you're quickly reminded that glamour here is both truth and illusion. The first customers drift in. A clerk with ink-stained fingers, pretending he's lordly. A factory foreman with far too much polish on his boots, equally convincing himself he belongs in these velvet-lined halls. Historians still argue whether brothels truly attracted lords in disguise, or if most a mainstream historical fact you can't ignore here. By mid-century, London may have hosted thousands of brothels and disorderly houses. Police reports in the 1870s estimated well over 7,000 women registered as prostitutes within the city, but the true number was likely many times higher when clandestine workers are counted. You suddenly realize you're one of an invisible army, though every pair of shoes wears its own unique wear and tear. Across the room, a colleague whispers about an open secret: how some women add quack tonics of phosphorus, gin, or even opium to drinks, either to heighten the client's mood or, more dangerously, to encourage him to knock out early and leave behind coins unattended. Fringe tidbits like this circulate endlessly backstage, half home remedy, half urban myth, entirely dubious. You shiver, knowing you'll need both wit and restraint to tell rumour from survival trick. The gas lamps hiss softly from their sconces, reminding you that even light is a fragile miracle in these rooms. One wrong sputter, soot clogging the tube, or careless match dropped on velvet, and this glamorous world becomes ash. Imagine explaining that to insurance agents. They'd write cause of fire, reckless luxury. You sit at a chaise, adjusting gloves that pinch your fingers, while one of the senior girls warns you in her sing-songy accent. Never show your hunger for money too quick. Pretend you eat caviar even if you've had nothing but bread. It's a rule of theatre as much as trade. The role of seductress requires richer costumes than your seamstress budget allows, but as long as you act the part, the illusion holds. Like many roles in history, it's more rehearsal than reality. Someone plays a battered piano against the wall, a melancholy tune that sounds suspiciously like it's missing half its notes. No matter. The illusion of sophistication works. The parlour is a stage. You've just become part of the show. You laugh when you don't feel like laughing. You wink when inside you're calculating whether rent, fines, and laundry costs will leave you a penny. And one of your lighter entertainment duties? Tossing a teasing remark at a shy customer. Because apparently comedy sells as much as cosmetics. So you joke. Careful with your glass. London water costs less than that whiskey. He chuckles nervously and tips more generously, proving that humour is your hidden currency. In the corner, you overhear the madam barter with a constable. Yes, policing in Victorian London often worked on arrangements. Some officers took bribes to turn a blind eye. Others conducted raids to prove vigour, which conveniently allowed for convenient headlines and higher pay negotiations. The madam's slipper taps like a metronome. Your evening depends on her knack for balance. You notice the staircase leading upward. More shadow than light. That's where transactions become private, behind bedroom doors draped in hangings. This first night, you're not yet called upstairs. Small relief. Instead, you're stationed in the main parlour, learning from observation. Think of it as the rookie bench, except instead of football tips, you're learning how to hide yawns at 2 a.m. A colleague leans against you, whispering that some workers name their parlour selves differently from their real names. You try a few in your head. Clara, Evelyn, Josephine. Your real name stays tucked close. Nadia across the hall swears she once used 6 names over 6 months. It makes you grin. If nothing else, you mental note that invisibility is more powerful when you can shuffle identities like playing cards. You let the night drift on. Feet sore, ears ringing, lungs stuffed with smoke. And yet, the velvet drapery, the music, the swirling hush when new clients pass, there's a theatre-like beauty in watching human masks go on and off. It's survival, but it's also pageantry. A strange blend of tragedy and comedy. The fact you're still standing proves you're no minor character. As doors close and boots clatter away into the night, you sit back in the chair with a final thought. The gas lamp glow will return again tomorrow, making you repeat the performance until you wake the next afternoon. It's never sunrise because you hardly catch it unless you've been unlucky. Curtains are still drawn tight, stifling the outside world. That thick smell of candle wax and rosewater sticks to your hair, and you wonder whether even the Thames could clean it out. This is your new rhythm, slowly learning that daylight belongs to respectable society, while night, fog, and gaslight belong to you. Your first real education comes not in books, but in rules. Decreed by the madam with the authority of a parliament all her own, she strides through the parlour with a bunch of jingling keys, clinking like a miser's necklace, and begins teaching you the laws that anchor her little empire. The first, curfew doesn't only belong to children, it belongs to you. Be late after visiting the grocer or returning from the bathhouse, and you pay a fine. No excuses. The ledger waiting atop her polished desk swallows coins almost as fast as the clients arrive to offer them. Here's the mainstream historical fact tucked among the velvet trim. Most Victorian brothels, especially mid-sized ones in London, operated on strict systems of fines and fees. Any broken dish, missed curfew, or failure to wear proper garments could cost a day's worth of wages. To the outside world, the house symbolized lawlessness, but internally, it could feel like a miniature bureaucracy, complete with red tape stitched in lace. And it doesn't end with curfews. Rule 2. Never reject a client without the madam's approval, unless you want another notch of debt on your account. Rule 3. Appearances matter. No lounging in slippers where gentlemen can see you. Even in exhaustion, you must sparkle, at least convincingly enough to pass under the yellow glare of gas lamps. The madam recites them with surprising humour, slipping in a dry aside about a former girl who once defied curfew, wandered into a pub, and returned with half the neighbourhood constables escorting her. Best advertisement we never asked for, and worst fine she ever paid, the madam mutters, her expression the very definition of equal parts annoyance and reluctant amusement. Between duties, the older women give you their own interpretation of the rules, an underground commentary, equal parts warning and survival guide. One insists, if you hide bread in your trunk, they fine you for mice, so hide it under the floorboard cracks. Another says, curtains must be washed on schedule, or she charges the cost to us. Best trick? Say the colour is meant to be smoky rose. She'll forget about the stain. Their humour cushions the sting, and you realise camaraderie comes not from love of the work, but from shared experience of bending without breaking. Historians still argue whether these houses were closer to prisons, with debts enforcing captivity, or closer to cooperative businesses, where women agreed to rules for collective security. Likely, the truth swings between extremes depending on the house. You personally feel the collar tightening, turning freedom into knots of financial obligation. But you also see glimmers of community. A girl pressing bread into a hungry colleague's palm, another sharing coal when pencils run out. On your second evening, the madam lectures you about fines. Stain address, 2 shillings. Forget to light a lamp by 8, 3. Argue with a police officer? I don't bother writing that one down, because you'll regret it more than money. You nod, a student at the world's most eccentric finishing school. Some rules feel surprisingly practical, others plain cruel. But all remind you, the house is a place of performance and constant vigilance. A quirky tidbit, some houses enforced laws about singing at the piano. Everyone had to know at least one song to warble for customers, badly or well. So nights passed with a chorus line of scratchy voices. You inherit this requirement, frantically rehearsing verses to avoid further fines. Naturally, You pick the shortest tune you know and belt it off-key. Applause or ridicule, it still counts as fulfilling the law. Someone elbows you, joking. Don't worry, darling. The worse you sound, the faster the men empty their glasses. And that means more coin for the house. Your first taste of punishment arrives quickly. A customer complains you took too long, laughing at his joke. The madam's response? A scribble in the ledger. A half-day's wage lost. You think about staging a protest, but catch the knowing eyes of your colleagues, who signal through shrugs. Best save your breath. Here, protest can be louder in whispers after curfew. One worker sneaks little symbols in the guest ledger. Tiny doodles hidden beside names that signify which patrons are stingy, which are kind, and which should be avoided if at all possible. A quick glance at these doodles arms you with warnings better than any official handbook. You begin cataloguing these complexities like a nervous student before exams. Curfews, dress codes, duties, piano songs, ledger doodles. The house seems a factory making illusions, and you are expected to operate like any cog, oiled, polished, and silent. One evening, sitting cross-legged on your narrow bed, you jot notes in a scrap of paper hidden in your corset lining. Always turn lamps on early. Pretend hunger means delicate waistline. Never imitate customers' accent when mocking. They sometimes walk back through doors faster than you think. It reads almost comically like a schoolchild's spelling list, except miss one and you pay with silver. Every now and then, amidst the rules and pressure, sparkles of humour sneak through. At one point, the madam scolds a girl for leaving muddy boots in the hallway. The girl snaps back. Blame the weather, not me. It's the Thames itself trying to visit. Even the madam cannot resist a sharp chuckle before adding a fine to the ledger. Laughter is rare enough that when it surfaces, you grab it greedily, let it nourish you. By the end of your first week, you have memorized the house rules as well as any catechism. Fines, curfews, lamp times, piano songs, disguising hunger. It forms a rigid fence around every step you take. But as you learn, fences can also be leaned against, and even carved with initials when no one is looking. Someone whispers a final lesson to you before bed. Rules here are like corsets. They squeeze, yes, but they also shape the life we present, whether we want it or not. You lie awake thinking about corsets and fences and laughter, and realize survival isn't only about obeying. It's about finding air holes in the fabric, places to breathe. Night begins with a corset tugged so tightly it feels like someone's trying to squeeze all the air out of your ribs with the enthusiasm of a blacksmith at his bellows. You're not heading to a gala. You're dressing for work. But here, dressing is the work. The first sale is appearance, and you, unfortunately, are the cash register. You stand before a cracked mirror, candle wax dripping in stubby towers along the frame. Beneath your fingers, the corset's whalebone makes its stubborn resistance known. The laces squealing as a colleague pulls them so tight you swear your lungs are filing a complaint. Not too tight, you gasp. She only grins. Darling, men don't love women who breathe. They love tiny waists. The fact you're squeezing yourself into this whalebone prison is not mere vanity. It's historically accurate. Victorian fashion prized the hourglass silhouette, And brothel workers were expected to embody the same look as society's most glamorous ladies, even without the fortune of a duchess. One mainstream fact worth noting: by the mid-late Victorian era, artificial bustles added exaggerated curves, and shopkeepers sold mass-produced corsets just like today's fast fashion, meaning even women of limited means could keep up with the latest silhouette standards, albeit at the cost of breathing freely. After corset comes chemise, petticoats, stockings, shoes, layer upon layer until you resemble a frosted cake with opinions. You slide into a gown glittering with cheap sequins and imitation pearls. Its sleeves cut just low enough to suggest daring without technically violating rules of decency. Decor of brothels wasn't only in the wallpaper, it was in their workers, shining like chandeliers, or at least approximations of chandeliers from Woolworth's bargain shelf. Rouge next, thick, alarmingly crimson, dabbed onto your cheeks until you look more fevered than flushed. Lips stained with carmine, brows darkened with ash if proper pencils are missing. Perfume splashed over the lot, lavender if you're lucky, patchouli if not. The curious fringe tidbit: some Victorian women used cosmetics mixed with deadly white lead or arsenic, substances now known to poison skin and erode health, but then widely sold. It's a cruel irony, painting yourself to look younger while shaving years off your life expectancy. You finish dressing and stand back, adjusting gloves that itch and creak. Somewhere deep down, you still recognize the person beneath, but she's hiding nervously behind billows of lace and satin. You remind yourself, this person is the mask, one you can remove when the night mercifully ends. Most nights, though, you fall asleep in part of the costume because undoing it feels like a Herculean task for someone with leaden limbs. The hallway buzzes with women emerging in their get-ups, ready to step into the parlour stage. Pulling on gloves, you overhear senior workers debating scholarly gossip. Historians still argue whether women like us copied society ladies' fashions, or whether society ladies copied us. After all, certain colours of silk and cosmetics, first sneered at as fallen women's attire, eventually spilled into mainstream high society. Who influenced whom remains an academic debate, but in this room, you know one thing for certain: fashion makes rank invisible in soft lamplight. A factory foreman with polished shoes looks aristocratic, and you, cinched to wasp waist proportions, pass as nobility if he squints long enough. Dressing, however, costs dearly. Every feather boa, every hair ribbon is leased or advanced at inflated prices. The madam loves to stockpile accessories and charge double or triple. Appearance is investment, she says brightly, as though cosmetics were shares on the London Exchange. You pay obediently, though the arithmetic scratches in your mind. It's hard to turn coin into bread if it's constantly transformed into rouge. Midway through your transformation, the piano in the parlour begins its usual clang. A customer is already downstairs. You adjust your skirts, muttering, "Wish corsets came with wheels." Another girl chuckles. If they did, men would charge extra. You smirk, descending in a trickle of sequins and self-mockery. Walking into the parlour dressed like this, you learn the paradox. You appear wealthy, glamorous, untouchably elegant, but your pockets are nearly empty. Many outsiders, catching just a glimpse, assume brothel workers lived extravagant lifestyles. The reality? Wages vanish faster than spilled absinthe, swallowed by costume, lodging, and fines. The silk you wear may sparkle in candlelight, but it owns you, not the other way around. Later in the evening, a conversation with one client brings your appearance into sharp relief. You look just like the ladies at Almack's. You force a coy smile, biting back the truth that entry into Almack's, the high society club, was as distant as travelling to Mars. This man, though, believes the illusion. For him, your gown equals status. For you, it's uncomfortable armour. When the night tapers off, you peel away the layers like skins of an onion. Each petticoat tossed leaves you closer to yourself again, though unfortunately also closer to cold air and the sound of scurrying mice in floorboards. You collapse against straw mattress, still wearing rouge smeared into pillow fabric. Before sleep takes you, you jot mental notes. Don't faint, no matter how romantic the corset makes it seem. Don't buy every ribbon, it's a trap. Smile for silk, even if it scratches. A lighter moment ends the evening. Friends joke about advertising corsets as portable exercise. Saves you the gym, someone says. And your ribs too, for that matter. You laugh out loud, sore lungs or not. Humour is still the best accessory you can wear. And so, dressed up like royalty, but living like a debtor, you drift towards sleep, already bracing yourself to lace again tomorrow. The costume, like the job, controls you. Yet inside your ribs, bruised though they may be, stubbornly beats the reminder you're still more than satin stretched on whalebone. By now, you've laced yourself into corsets, powdered your cheeks brighter than ripe apples, and mastered the subtle art of walking without tripping over 3 layers of skirts. Tonight, though, reality clunks through the gaslit doorway in muddy boots. Customers, and what a variety they are. The parlour door swings open, letting in a man whose ink-stained fingers give him away at once. A clerk. His shoulders stoop from endless hours hunched at dusty ledgers. But here he straightens like a knight entering a quest. He looks at you as though you are the ballroom fantasy his paycheck was too small to buy. You learn quickly that clerks come with nervous giggles, too much brandy after 2 glasses, and hesitant conversation where they try, and usually fail, to quote poetry to sound clever. Next, a factory foreman enters in boots so polished, it's a wonder they survived London streets. His voice booms like machinery, and his laugh rattles dust from wall sconces. He spends freely because he wants women who will assure him that away from the factory floor, he is something grander than just another cog. His version of flirting resembles shouting instructions at steam engines, but coins are coins. And then there are aristocrats, or so they claim. Every now and then, dressed in simpler clothes, a man insists he is merely a traveller from Surrey, yet his shoes whisper another story. Calfskin leather too fine for average wages. Historians still argue whether brothels were truly playgrounds for upper-class men incognito, or whether stories spread mostly as tabloid fodder for a public drunk on scandal. You, however, sit at his side, watching his hand tighten on a glass of port, debating whether his accent is Oxford or just very determined pretending. Either way, the game is the same. Keep the secret, keep the coin. The oddest part of your work is not just attending to different income levels. It's witnessing different versions of masculinity paraded in velvet-lined chairs. The shy clerk who suddenly grows bold when faced with compliments. The factory overseer who needs to forget he yells for survival each day. The maybe aristocrat who relishes anonymity. Every one of them proves that under candlelight, identity shifts as easily as smoke. Of course, not every customer is a dream. Some arrive with tempers sharpened by gin. Others slur excuses to avoid paying. The madam deploys her ledger like a weapon in such cases, barking demands until even the rowdiest man empties his pocket. But sometimes, women like you end up caught in the mess, soothing insults, dodging clumsy hands, laughing on cue. Humor helps. At one point, when a man sneezes halfway through declaring his undying affection, you arch a brow and remark, "Bless you, Romeo always had a touch of hay fever." The parlour roars, tension dissolves, and he blushes, wallet already sliding open. Comedy remains your second currency. One mainstream fact relevant here: by the 19th century, Britain's legal system didn't criminalise prostitution itself, but keeping a disorderly house, i.e. brothel, was illegal. This left every madam and her employees at risk of police stings. That's why customers arrived in such mixed measures. Some were bold, some sheepish, some desperate not to be seen. To them, discretion was worth more than perfume. And oh, the quirky tidbits, the little idiosyncrasies of visitors. Some clerks demanded you call them captain, despite never having been offshore. A bookseller, apparently nervous, once asked a girl to simply read him Shakespeare for an hour while he sat, face beet red. And an urban legend spreads that one gentleman admired women's boots so much he begged to polish them mid-conversation, assuring everyone it was a mark of gentlemanly respect. No one knew whether to laugh, charge him extra, or both. Through it all, you watch colleagues slip into characters as though slipping into gowns. One mocks a lord's accent to his face. He laughs, pays twice. Another feigns expert knowledge of horse races she's never seen. And the man leaves utterly convinced she's an equestrian goddess. Illusion isn't a bonus here, it's the product itself. In hushed corners, women compare types. The consensus is simple. Clerks tip little but listen well. Foremen pay loudly but leer heavily. Travellers clutch secrets like gold. And aristocrats, you never admit too much. After all, loose tongues can ruin both sides. This secret taxonomy becomes a survival manual, like ornithology, but with waistcoats instead of feathers. One lady tells you with mock solemnity, if he says his name is William, assume it isn't. If he says he only visits once a month, prepare to see him thrice weekly, because he blushes before even... And so you learn. Every night brings a fresh gallery of humanity. Each customer convinced his arrival is unique. You, costume tight at the ribs, hair teased against fire hazard, smile as they enter, cataloguing them the way historians catalogue ships. By build, by purpose, by likely end. Historian debates will rage in libraries for centuries, but you know the truth written in rouge on your face each evening. The truth is that customers come in many costumes, but all carry the same need to reach for companionship, even if it's only rented by lamplight. When the last boots stomp away into the fog, you collapse upstairs, dress pulled like the aftermath of the storm cloud. You remind yourself tonight's variety was nothing new. Tomorrow will bring another chorus line of lonely, arrogant, awkward, or extravagant visitors. Customers are unpredictable, yes, but the need for them is not. And perhaps, in the quietest corner of your imagination, you admit a truth. The clients, too, are trapped in roles. Masks they wear as compulsively as you wear rouge. The costume glitters, the customers swarm, the jokes fly, but what matters in the long run is clinking coin. The brothel world is not a fairy tale. It is an economy with lace curtains. You soon learn that surviving here means juggling ledgers as carefully as smiles. Picture your small, candlelit bedroom. On one side sits your bag of tokens, bits of copper, silver, the occasional gold. On the other side, a never-ending list of expenses. Lodging in the house isn't free. Laundry isn't free. Meals, thin stews, bread so stale it doubles as masonry, aren't free either. And worst of all, the gowns you're forced to wear are rented at something resembling highway robbery with ruffles. This, in fact, mirrors a wider pattern, a solid historical fact. Many Victorian brothels operated on what modern scholars call the debt bondage system. Workers technically earned wages, but nearly everything was clawed back by the house. Room, board, clothes, drink fines, and damages. The madam held women in financial captivity, even as the winnings sparkled with outward glamour. London's brothels were often nicknamed gilded cages, and you quickly feel the bars. At the end of your second week, you count your coins. After deductions, your income is roughly enough for socks, provided you don't need to eat that week. You groan, realizing that despite entertaining half of London, you've barely earned more than the urchins running along the Thames banks yelling, "Penny for sweeping." Irony strikes hard. Your rouge is pricier than your dinner. You are luxury incarnate on an empty stomach. Another quirky tidbit. Many brothels issued their own token systems or insisted clients trade cash for in-house drinks and favours tokens. Ostensibly to streamline services, in reality, it allowed madams to fudge numbers and underpay workers. You recall one woman showing a handful of tin discs stamped "good for one round of gin," her lip curling as she muttered, "Pity gin doesn't pay the baker." Historians still argue whether this debt-laden structure was deliberately exploitative or simply an unintended outcome of trying to run businesses that skirted the law. Was the madam a cruel profiteer, or just another woman scrambling to survive by enforcing the same system that trapped her? To you, the question feels academic. Either way, you are working hard and eating poorly. Then there are the tips, the delicate matter of persuading customers to part with extra coins. Winks, jokes, gentle teases often do the trick. One night, a clerk drops a silver shilling when you remark, Spill that whiskey, and I'll start charging you for laundry services too. He chuckles and tips again later. Proving wit might just be your best form of banking. But tips are uncertain. Customers boast they'll take care of you and vanish before dawn without leaving a penny. Others leave behind coins, but expect loyalty in return. Loyalty you cannot afford to promise. The one rule everyone agrees upon is simple. Never count on money until it actually jingles in your pocket. One evening, the madam gathers everyone for a lecture. She paces like a schoolmistress with a ledger under her arm. You think your gowns are gifts? They're not. You think piano tuning happens free? It doesn't. Every drop of oil in the lamps costs money. You want to shout back, so does the bread I choke down daily. Instead, you sit politely, nodding, heart thumping with resentment. You know rebellion here is costly. Fine by coin, fine by exile. Yet whispers among the women reveal solidarity. One murmurs, I'll save a scrap of supper for you. Debts can't touch bread hidden under pillows. Sometimes small acts keep spirits buoyant. The senior girl Sarah shares advice on how to keep at least a sliver of every tip untouched. Her scheme? Stash a coin in your boot during the shift. Madam counts your purse, not your footwear. Genius. You try it one night, and though it pinches your toes horribly, you fall asleep, comforted by the thought of that secret coin. The ledger itself becomes an object of fascination. Bound in leather, pages crammed with columns of names, fines, balances, it looks almost regal. Yet it is the very record of your entrapment. You've begun to decipher it like scripture. Line 1, debt for clothing. Line 2, rent. Line 3, candle fees. Somewhere below your name, numbers shrinking slower than soaked slivers. And occasionally, clients themselves become tangled in finances. One man insists he wants to rescue you, promising to pay your debts and whisk you away. But when you coyly calculate the figures, his eyes, the unfairness, though deep, bonds women in shared struggle. Throughout late nights, gossip turns practical. Which tailor sells slightly cheaper corsets? Which butcher provides leftover scraps if you smile enough? Which baker takes IOUs without ratting to the madam? Economic advice circulates like folk medicine, half real, half hopeful. Weary laugh escapes you when someone jokes that brothels are the first banks of broken promises. To prove her point, she waves her small coin stash about. You nod wearily. It rings true. The house profits most. The rest of you chase pennies dressed as princesses. Still, once in a rare while, a client pays generously enough to lift the gloom. A merchant, maybe drunk with success, or just drunk, showers coins so abundantly you believe, for one exhilarating moment, escape might be possible. That burst of silver glimmer, that single night's handful, becomes your talisman against despair, tucked away in memory and boot heel alike. Yet as dawn peeks between curtains, you wake with the old iron weight in your chest. Debts, fines, tokens that mean nothing outside these walls. And still, miraculously, you laugh when speaking with the other women, trading survival tips along with crumbs of bread. Humor, even gallows humor, is free, at least for now. So you sit at candle's end, eyes burning, and rehearse your day's lesson one last time. Money here is never just money. It is power, cage, hope, and illusion, all minted into coin that always feels a little too slippery in your palm. Evenings blur now, one into another, like streaks of rouge wiped onto a handkerchief. What steadies you when corsets pinch and the ledger feels heavier than your shoulders? Surprisingly, it's the small, flickering light of companionship. Those quick glances, whispered jokes, and quiet support between the women sharing these same cramped hallways. Behind the polished parlour doors, you're all rival performers, vying for coins, for tips, for favour. But upstairs, this is all real. In the dim bedrooms where wallpaper peels like tree bark, something softer grows, a sort of backstage solidarity. Take Sarah, for instance. She's the one who taught you to stash coins in your boot. Tonight, she sits cross-legged on her straw mattress, sewing at the hem of her gown. When the thread snaps, she tosses the needle and groans. If fashion is meant to flatter, why does it stab me in the fingers every time? You laugh so loudly, the woman across the hall calls, "Save some humour for your clients!" That's the rhythm, suffering, softened with wit, stitched through with survival tips. You soon discover brothel friendships survive on barter. Rouge shared between women, stolen biscuits split in half, combs passed across rooms like talismans. It's a small, secret economy, in defiance of the greedy official ledger downstairs. The madam may guard coins, but women guard each other in crumbs. One mainstream fact gives depth to these whispers. Victorian social observers often wrote that women in brothels were isolated, without friends, without loyalty. That picture is only half the truth. Letters and memoir fragments reveal plenty of bonds formed inside parlours, despite competition. True, rivalries bloomed, especially when customers favoured one woman more than another. But alliances, strategic, affectionate, or both, flourished in the cracks between hardship. At supper, thin stew again, but mercifully warm. You hear a colleague brag about tricking a stingy customer by accidentally spilling gin onto her dress. Charged him 3 times the value in cleaning, she snickers. Everyone chuckles, partly admiring, partly envious. You file away the trick for desperate nights. And then there are moments of aching vulnerability. One girl sobs quietly in her bed, a letter crumpled in her fist. News of her mother's passing at home. No holidays are granted here for grief. You and Sarah climb into the bed beside her. 3 women sharing muffled tears onto one stained pillow. The parlour may be about illusion, but upstairs, honesty seeps out, fragile and raw. The scholarly debates float among you too, though never dressed as scholarship. Historians still argue whether we're sinners or victims, Sarah mutters between bites of bread. Me, I think we're entrepreneurs with very bad luck, another woman retorts. If we're entrepreneurs, where's my dividend? The laughter bubbles, as necessary as the gin hidden under mattresses. And oh, the quirky tidbits about each other. One girl insists she can fall asleep in under a minute, no matter the noise. To prove it, she lies back while piano clangs downstairs and promptly starts snoring. Another has adopted a stray cat, hiding it in cupboards, feeding it stolen scraps. When the madam nearly discovers, all the girls pitch in to chase the animal discreetly out the window, suppressing giggles until their ribs ache. Who knew Victorian brothels doubled as impromptu cat sanctuaries? Friendships form in strange ways. Sometimes it's over shared mockery of a pompous client. Sometimes it's swapping hairpins before a showy evening. Sometimes it's simply sitting in silence while one woman curls against another, too exhausted to speak. The world brands you fallen, but here, behind thick curtains, you find moments to rise, just enough to breathe. You begin to notice a pattern. Gossip is not idle, it's survival. When one woman whispers that a certain gentleman has wandering hands and a cruel streak, you take care to avoid being alone with him. When another recommends feigning a headache to escape a particularly persistent visitor, you borrow the trick gratefully. Each tale shared is a shield added to your armor. Trust, though, is fragile. One night, a fierce quarrel erupts over stolen gloves. One woman swears another pinched them. Screaming echoes down the corridor until the madam threatens silence with brutal fines. You retreat to your room, shaken, reminded that rivalry lurks under kinship like splinters under skin. In these halls, affection and animosity dance hand in hand. And yet, in calmer hours, the bonds return. You huddle at Sarah's side, marveling at her ability to joke even in misery. I swear, if debts get any heavier, we'll all sink into the Thames like overloaded barges, she says, making you choke on laughter you desperately needed. Another night, someone sneaks biscuits to share during candle extinguishing, whispering grandly about hosting a banquet. The banquet consists of 2 stale sweets divided 6 ways. But for those 10 minutes, you feast like queens. You reflect, lying in your bed. Brothels may have been engines of exploitation, but tucked in their attic corners, you find the only tenderness you truly trust. The world condemns you. Clients use you. Madam bleeds you. But the woman who shares rouge with you genuinely cares. That realization saves you more than any amount of coin. And so tonight, as moonlight brushes faint silver onto peeling wallpaper, you sink into slumber, listening to whispers and laughter leak softly from neighboring rooms. It feels almost like dormitories of forgotten students, learning unteachable lessons, bound together by circumstance, scribbling your lives in invisible ink across each other's hearts. Perhaps decades from now, historians will keep debating whether brothel women were fractured rivals or secret sisters. But you've lived the answer already. Here, motherhood and sisterhood improvise in cramped hallways. It's not sainthood, it's not sin. It's just the small mercy of being seen. Night after night, you adjust gowns, share jokes with Sarah, and file away tips on how to handle every clerk and foreman who drifts through the door. But some shadows are heavier than others. Tonight, you sense it when a colleague coughs violently after an evening upstairs, raspy, hacking, leaving her pale as the sheets. Everyone in the house knows what that cough might mean, though no one says the words aloud at first. Illness stalks your world like an unwelcome lodger. Out on the streets, the French disease, syphilis, is spoken of in whispers, as if syllables alone are contagious. The Victorians knew little about how it worked, but feared it deeply. The mainstream historical fact here is sobering. In the mid-19th century, cases of venereal disease were officially so prevalent among soldiers and sailors that Parliament enacted the Contagious Diseases Acts, laws allowing police to detain suspected prostitutes and force them to undergo medical examinations. Resistance to these laws eventually became a landmark feminist battlefront. But for you, in this brothel, the fear is far more personal. When you hear shrieks 2 streets away, voices warning raid, your stomach twists. Police raids aren't just urban tales. They arrive unannounced, officers barging in, claiming to protect public morals. What they protect is their reputation for cleanliness in the city, and maybe their wallets when bribes are forthcoming. The house freezes in terror at the thought. Fines, closure, or worse, public shaming in court. It's bad enough to cough blood. Worse still, to have your name printed in scandal sheets. Historians still argue whether the Contagious Diseases Acts were truly about public health, or whether they were merely about controlling women, policing their bodies while ignoring men's equal responsibility. In this gaslit parlour, though, the nuance doesn't matter. Every cough, you sharpen your awareness of risks. Some girls insist gin kills germs. Doubtful. Others place faith in preventative tonics sold by street hawkers, laced with mercury. A quirky tidbit. One pamphlet circulating promised a syphilis shield made from eating large quantities of garlic daily. You smirk. At least garlic breath might keep men away, which in itself could reduce disease risk. Fear changes little rituals. You light the lamps earlier, as if candles can ward off infection. You joke with Sarah while scrubbing basins, because laughter is sometimes the only disinfectant. And yet, each evening, the anxiety returns. What if the men carry it? What if tonight is the night your own fate silently changes? Compounded with illness is fear of authority. Police gossip swirls. Sometimes they schedule raids, sometimes they don't. Some constables are bribed to look away. Others chase glory in court. The madam cultivates connections to escape raids, but her smiles fade when uniforms push through the gates. You learn the art of ducking behind curtains, inventing roles, housemaid, laundress, anything but who you are. One night, you hide upstairs, clutching a brush, pretending to polish boots while your heart pounds like a kettle drum. Among workers comes a shared cynicism. A younger girl grumbles. They say we endanger men's health. Funny, it's men who endanger ours. Heads nod around the supper table. That truth, bitter as cheap gin, circulates until swallowed by silence. Small comforts, though, sustain you. Sarah composes mocking songs about police raids, humming tunes with lyrics about constables tripping over their own batons. One evening, she sings so loudly even the madam lets out a rare laugh. Anxiety doesn't vanish, but for a few minutes it loosens its grip. And beyond law and disease looms poverty's ever-present sword. Starvation sickness is quieter than coughs, but no less lethal. You often feel lightheaded, wondering if it's corset too tight or appetite too hollow. A sympathetic cook sometimes sneaks second helpings, saving you for one more night. Still, nothing unnerves you more than watching the pale girl coughing in her bed. She insists it's just a chill, but whispers among the others grow. The French disease, same signs as Molly last year. You clutch at hope, praying for her recovery, though in this house, optimism can feel like a luxury you lease by the hour. Before sleep, you trace a plan in your thoughts. Ration bread to keep your body stronger. Lean on Sarah's humour when fear gnaws at your ribs. And never forget, every risk you run may still catch up despite such defences. This precarious balance is what makes your world less like velvet halls and more like walking a rickety rope bridge stretched over London's abyss. And so you fold yourself under blankets, repeating, half prayer, half joke. Here's hoping garlic prevents something besides friends. Your heart beats quick at the possibility of raids, of sickness, of collapse, but you let exhaustion carry you anyway, because dawn will bring survival's demands once again, even if lungs and ledgers both feel fragile. The coughs still echo in the stairwell, the bruised ribs from corsets still ache, and yet, outside these walls, a whole other story brews. It begins when pamphlets with bold titles flutter into the brothel like fugitives, hidden beneath someone's shawl. The print is crisp, the language righteous, the intent clear. Reformers have set their sights on women like you. On one page, a missionary lady describes rescuing fallen women, as though you're shipwrecked sailors begging for a lifeboat. On another, activists argue fiercely against the Contagious Diseases Acts, screaming in ink that women's bodies must not be policed like contraband. You and Sarah curl on the bed over one such pamphlet, giggling part in mockery, part in disbelief. Imagine, Sarah says with a crooked smile, someone thinking they can wash a life clean with a Bible verse and a new bonnet. The pamphlets are only part of the rising tide. Mainstream historical fact. Beginning in the 1860s and 70s, women like Josephine Butler spearheaded campaigns to repeal the Contagious Diseases Acts, arguing that forcing humiliating checks on suspected prostitutes was cruel, unjust, and biased. The movement eventually succeeded, but in your present moment, the noise is still building. A storm of speeches, pamphlets, and protests. Inside the brothel, you and the others debate what it means. Some find hope in reform. One woman whispers that she dreams of leaving this world and joining a sewing circle run by church missions. Another scoffs outright, declaring, "They say they'll save us, but saving feels suspiciously like controlling. If they wanted to help, they'd leave us bread instead of sermons." Historians still argue whether early reformers truly cared about empowering women, or whether they simply wanted to impose their own versions of morality. You, perched on a bedspread patched with holes, know the answer probably swings somewhere between compassion chained to control. Quirky tidbit? Among the eccentric proposals floated during the late Victorian era were lock hospitals and Magdalen homes, where women could be retrained into laundry work. The irony, Many of you already did laundry here, for free, fined for every shirt that came back wrinkled. The idea that escaping the brothel meant washing far more linen at far less pay strikes you as a cosmic joke. Outside, temperance activists march through soot-grey streets, singing hymns. You occasionally peek out your shutter, listening to the faint harmonies. Then you hear someone mutter one line that sticks. Shall we starve dignity into existence? You chew on that phrase for weeks, wondering if dignity purchased at the price of hunger is really the kind worth saving. Within the house, debates become nightly performances. Sarah, ever theatrical, climbs atop a chair to mimic the reformers. Come forth, lost lambs. We bring unto you a sewing needle and the promise of endless socks. Everyone roars with laughter, applauding her ridiculous sermon. Humour becomes your defiance, the ability to mock attempts to save you while still cherishing the idea of freedom in your secret heart. Every so often, a reformer herself crosses the brothel's threshold, armed with pamphlets and prayers. Some are kind, genuinely moved by your plight. Others scold sharply, their compassion soaked in condescension. You and the others exchange looks in those moments, silently agreeing that sermons do little against ledger debt or syphilitic danger. What would help more is a pie, maybe a few coins, and a pair of shoes that doesn't pinch. Between these visits, rumours swirl. Politicians discussing whether regulation ought to expand to more cities. Church committees scheming over how to house rescued women. Feminists holding rallies in smoky halls. You're at the heart of a storm, but feel strangely invisible. Like the storm is about you, yet doesn't actually include you. Still, the symbolism cannot be ignored. The noise from reformers promises cracks in the old order. You catch yourself wondering, could change truly come? Could one day mean walking freely through London streets without fear of raids, without shame glued to your name? The dream feels tempting, and yet reality quickly returns. A corset laces tight, the piano clangs, the queue of customers appears. Reform debates might roar in Parliament, but your supper tonight still consists of bread that's harder than brick. Late one evening, while everyone steals moments to rest, Sarah sighs beside you. They say they'll rescue us, she murmurs, but no one asks if we want rescuing. Funny, isn't it? They protest about us, but never with us. You nod, lying flat on a straw mattress, staring at cracks in the ceiling that look strangely like the shapes of broken wings. For now, reform is background music. Too loud to ignore, too far to truly change your situation. It hums beneath the parlour songs. Mixes with police whistles in the street, filters in through pamphlets smoothed against bedsheets. It is a story told about you, around you, but rarely with your voice. Yet in that very silence lies a quieter rebellion. You listen, you joke, you tuck away scraps of information like coins in your boot. Pamphlets folded under your pillow make you dream not of salvation wrapped in sermons, but of a future where your choices belong to you. And though you might fall asleep coughing, though debts press just as tightly as corset strings, you allow one stubborn thought to stay. Reform is not a lifeboat yet, but it is proof someone out there realizes waves exist. Slightly. Dreams are thin currency in this place, but you cling to them as stubbornly as you cling to your last hidden coin. It's not unusual. Late into the night, when the piano has gone silent, and the laughter downstairs has fizzled into snores, women whisper to each other about lives that might have been. You lie side by side with Sarah, staring up at the cracked plaster ceiling. She breaks the silence first. You know what I'd do? Open a tea shop. Nothing fancy, just a corner shop where old ladies argue about scones being too dry. Her voice softens. I'd paint the shutters lavender. The room grows warm with the image. Lavender shutters glowing in the imagination, brighter than a gas lamp ever could. Dreaming of escape has become your favourite rebellion. And you're not alone. During stew suppers and short walks to the market, every woman shares her what if. One longs to sew dresses without stitching them under a madam's thumb. Another fancies leaving for America, convinced the streets are paved with silver, not the murky mud clogging London drains. Everyone has some imagined horizon shimmering just out of reach. Mainstream historical fact reminds you of the cruel math. In Victorian England, options were limited. Respectable jobs for women were usually low-paying domestic service, textile work, or laundering. Marriage to a decent provider was the escape pitched by society, but not everyone found or wanted a husband. For many, brothels in fact offered better cash than domestic service, at least in theory. In practice, well, your ledger proves the theory is a little too optimistic. Still, you imagine other trades. Sometimes you catch yourself daydreaming about travelling abroad. Stories drift in about women who sail to Australia, either as part of emigration schemes or chasing whispers that colonies offered new starts. Historians still argue whether those resettlements provided liberation or simply shifted exploitation to new coordinates. But in your mind, the vision sparkles, a ship's bow slicing waves. Fresh breezes cleansing the smog from your lungs, perhaps even a new name stitched into your apron's hem. And then there are tales of miracle escapes, rare but retold with religious fervour. Someone insists a girl once married a wealthy client who fell in love for real. Cynics roll their eyes to the rafters, but you notice their lips still twitch with hope they can't quite crush. Everyone wants to believe there's a door not barred by debts, lies, or illness. Among the quirkiest of dreams is Sarah's fantasy about forming a travelling troupe. We'd perform comedy sketches about constables slipping on horse dung, tour taverns across the countryside. Her audience, namely the threadbare women perched around soup bowls, clap and laugh so hard broth sloshes onto skirts. Of course it's absurd, but absurdity tastes like freedom in a world where everything else tastes like overboiled cabbage. Sometimes you join in the dream-making with your own declarations. If I leave, you whisper, I'll learn to cook something better than stew. Imagine a whole table of pies, meat, apple, even custard. A feast. The room erupts in mock applause, one woman teasing, lovely darling, but can you imagine us trying to keep custard chilled? Eat fast before it grows legs. Jokes aside, you sense how fragile these dreams are. They depend on health, money, timing, rarely offered all at once. And still, you see the power they hold. When a woman despairs after a terrible client, a friend murmurs, "One day that sewing shop will be yours." And she exhales with a smile, able to endure another ladle of stew. Yet lurking behind every lavender shutter, every custard pie, every Australia voyage, lies the hard question: is freedom ever more than imagination? Historians wrestle with this too, whether 19th century workers had real chances to get out, or whether hopes largely fizzled in debts and disease. Tonight you lean against your small window, peeling paint sticking to your sleeve, and watch dawn creep in pale mist over rooftops. You whisper your dream, small, maybe silly, but yours. A handful of coins safely saved, enough to rent a tiny flat outside this gilded cage. Dreams, you realize, aren't only about size. The smaller they are, the closer they feel. The floorboards creak as Sarah pads over, hair loose, gown wrinkled. She looks at you searchingly. Tea shop, sewing shop, America. You think any of us ever get it? You pause before answering, sensing the weight of both our lives in her question. Maybe not all of us, you murmur, but someone has to, or else hope itself would wither away. ... And in that moment, you realize dreaming is more than rebellion. It's oxygen. Without those lavender shutters, those custard pies, those mock vaudeville tours, the debts would suffocate you. Every night's fantasy is a lungful of air you desperately need. So you keep dreaming, even knowing many will remain fantasies. Because in a world where money vanishes into ledgers and illness steals girls overnight, unbroken dreams are the only possessions truly your own. Dawn creeps in slowly, hesitant and pale. Not gold and triumphant, but the kind of watery light that seeps over soot-stained tiles and into alleys still sticky with last night's spilled gin. You're bone-tired as you push the brothel door open and step outside. For a moment, the smell of damp stone and coal smoke replaces the perfume fog that clung to your lungs all night. Your boots find their way across cobblestones slick with morning rain. The city of London never sleeps, but it certainly changes faces. At night, gaslight casts the world in shimmering pretense. In the morning, trade carts rattle, market stalls creak awake, and you, corset-laced and heavy-eyed, become one of the countless shadows drifting home. Other women trail beside you, skirts dragging. No one bothers to chatter much now. Humour thrives in the parlour, but dawn belongs to silence. Everything has the muted feel of a stage after curtain call. Costumes discarded, illusions shelved, performers simply trudging off into ordinary daylight. One mainstream historical fact sharpens the fatigue hanging from your shoulders. Brothel workers often lived half-nocturnal existences, with bodies inside parlours from dusk until early morning, then catching sleep in overcrowded dormitories until afternoon. The entire rhythm of Victorian society, shops by day, brothels by night, left you constantly out of step with respectable routines. Neighbours saw you stumbling home at dawn, and the judgment of their eyes was louder than any church bell. And yet, in this hour, you feel oddly resilient. Even after debts pinched and laws threatened, even after coughs rattled through the stairwell, you're still breathing, still walking. That in itself feels quietly magnificent. Historians still argue whether women like you saw themselves as defeated victims of circumstance, or as pragmatic survivors navigating the only choices society allowed. Perhaps both portraits contain some truth, but you know this: despite all cages, you've carved laughter in parlour corners, found sisterhood in shared bread, and carried secret dreams like sparks tucked in your boot heel. Sarah nudges you, grinning sleepily. Bedtime finally, she murmurs with a flourish, as though sleep were another role she's about to perform. The joke lands softly. It's your third of the night, and your last before exhaustion topples you. Even here, humour manages to rise through fog like stubborn weeds pushing through cracks in a city sidewalk. You reach your narrow cot, peeling away ribbons, beads, rouge still crusted on your cheeks. The room smells of straw and lavender-scented water, though the lavender's more imagination than fact. As you collapse into rough blankets, you realise tonight has taught you not only about coins, corsets and raids, but about resilience stitched together from scraps. The brothel has shaped you. You in turn shape survival. Beneath every gaslight fantasy lies a woman who endures. As you drift into shallow sleep, morning itself feels like a curtain closing on another act in your unending play. Now, let your breath slow, as if your body itself is finally stepping away from the heavy velvet curtains of the parlour. Imagine that creak of a door slowly closing behind you, keeping the noise and smoke inside, leaving you outside in the fresh hush of dawn. The stones are cool underfoot, the air damp with the river's mist, but the streets are emptying of last night's echoes. With each long inhale, imagine brushing off the scraps of perfume and soot. With each long exhale, let go of the weight of corsets, the pull of the ledger, the endless clamour of customers' voices. They fade further with every breath. Somewhere nearby, a small bird begins its cry into the new day, tentative but steady. You can picture its feathers fluffing against the chill. You steady yourself on that sound. Feel how fragile yet persistent it is. Maybe that's you too. Fragile but persistent, carrying on through soot, through laughter, through long nights. Now picture walking towards sunlight, rising faint peach above the rooftops. Every block you walk feels softer, quieter, as if the whole of London is finally exhaling as well. Curtains flutter from a neighbour's window,